The LavaLoon is an ever-trending strategy in Clash of Clans, and for good reason. It is very popular due to its high success rate. Now, it can be difficult to perform, but that is what this video is going to help you with. I am going to break down a number of different variations of the LavaLoon so that you can take down a variety of base designs. So let's get into it. The first variation of LavaLoon that we are going to show you is arguably the best, and it is the Queen Charge. Now, in order to get this to work, you want to send your queen into the base to take out a couple of key objectives, but also you need to set up pathing for the LavaLoon. That is probably the most important thing. Now for this one, the queen is going to come into this top area, take out the multi-inferno, the eagle artillery, also going to get the queen and the clan castle troops from within the middle here. However, she is going to take out this entire section, meaning that the Lalo can easily come around the bottom. Now, in order to get that queen into the base, you've got to set up the funnel and you've got to think about what is going to draw your queen in. Now, in this base design, we have this huge gap which is actually not going to draw the queen into the base because there's nothing there. So there has to be a wide funnel, and that is where the king down this side is going to be useful, followed by a baby dragon and loon here for the queen to self funnel into the base. So let's start the attack and then we will break this down in a bit more depth as we go along. Starting out with a baby dragon and a loon. Very good to get this mortar and gold mine because it's not always easy to use a baby dragon in order to take out two buildings. You've got to think about how you're going to do that. Are you going to use a Valkyrie? Can you bowler bounce it? Is a P.E.K.K.A the best option? Ultimately, you need to think about what is the cheapest option, but also what is going to get this done relatively fast. Because you don't want a time fill, you don't want an archer in there sitting picking off a building all day. You need to get this done. Now, when I first watched this replay, I thought, maybe we could sneak a loon onto this archer tower, just exchange it, take that down. Would be very good to get an archer tower for one balloon, right? But actually it's not even needed in this one because the queen is not going to be under any damage here. We've got the healers and the rage spell, so although this balloon does actually get across and get it, even if it didn't, the queen would have took that out and it would have been no problem anyway. That would have been 5 troop capacity and that of the loon wasted. So the wall wrecker is the method of choice here, and across the other LavaLoon strategies I will show you, the wall wrecker isn't used in any of the other replays coming up. The funnel has been created nicely on this right side. The queen actually helped to create that funnel herself. Do take note of that. Wherever you position the queen, she can actually take out buildings in that vicinity in order to basically stand in one spot and shoot in different directions. Now, the king down this other side is very important to make sure that the queen comes straight into the base behind the wall wrecker. A key note here is that loon coming in to where the multi-inferno is. If you have a multi-inferno with gaps around it like that, you can almost guarantee there is going to be an air bomb. So send in that coconut loon to help protect your healer. Now, do think about what you're putting in your clan castle here, guys. If you are using a wall wrecker and the queen charge, you don't want your healers going onto a P.E.K.K.A, let's say. So be careful about what you're putting in there, and it is important to note that we actually don't want the wall wrecker getting any further than this because we want the queen to come down this side. So sometimes people might even pop their wall wrecker early. That's because of pathing and where you do and don't want the queen to go. We don't want the queen to come down this area. We actually want her to come to the eagle, and that is where the jump spell is used here to give us access straight to that area. Now, why is that? Well, it's just a lot easier to send the queen in this direction and separate the base into 2 halves. So we've got one here for the Lalo, one for the queen. If the queen comes down into this area, she's going to take a lot more damage and it's harder to predict where she will go. Whereas the jump spell placed in this area, notice how it doesn't open up the bottom. We know exactly where the queen's going to go. She's incredibly predictable, and that is an important factor. The less unpredictability you have, then the better off you are going to be. Now that Lalo is incredibly easy at this stage. Once we've got the pathing here for the Lalo, it's just a case of coming in from the few different angles to get the defenses on the outside to draw the main pack of the balloons through the center over the town hall. Grand Warden's ability will be used over the Giga Bomb, so it's not a problem, although you do have to consider in different base designs when you are going to be hitting the town hall and making sure you can get through that. So notice how we have a couple of loons coming into the bottom in order to take out these buildings on the outside. That is really important actually, because you need to keep your main push of loons coming through the center. So it's not just about being surgical from different angles initially, as you've seen. It's actually maintaining that push through the center of the base. So let's say we didn't take down the buildings at the bottom here. What would happen is when these big group of loons got to here, some would go to the wizard tower, some would come down here to the archer tower. Then from there, some would go to this Tesla, some would come down this way. And they all of a sudden start splitting up all over the place, and it actually becomes inefficient because you've got less balloons shooting on the defenses, but also it just takes more time. They have to move out of the base to move back into the base. It's not really efficient. You want to keep the bulk of your balloons just in that one sweep around the base, and that's then where the spells are used. Don't forget about the cleanup minions in the other side of the base once the balloons have came through, because that's always important. But if you can keep the queen alive in a queen charge attack, then it is really important, and it's again just making sure that you can get maximum value out of both of the phases of the attack and making sure that they're working together and not against each other. The second variation differs quite a lot to the first one, and it's all about the amount of troops that you commit in that initial phase and the amount of time. Obviously, the queen charge, we not only committed quite a few troops, but we actually committed quite a lot of time to that as well. So you do want to get a lot of value and ensure that the Lalo is just a smaller portion. However, on this attack, it is a Sui Hero or a hero dive method. So basically, you're just sending your heroes in to get a small amount of value, create pathing, maybe take a building or two, and then a large chunk of the attack is the Lalo. Now, looking at where the queen is, that's the main focus of this Sui Lalo, because actually we can get into the queen from this area. However, that wasn't the plan. This was actually, I believe Steph changed the attack here mid-attack. Let me know what you think when we get to it though. Starting out this one, the loons and the baby dragon, in order to just create that funnel here and send the heroes down to the bottom. This is where it gets interesting. So the king leads out in front, starts to take out them buildings, and the ability is popped here along with wall breakers who break open access to the multi-inferno for the queen. So clearly that was the target here. King's ability popped in order to try and break that funnel. Why the queen does not go into the base there, I mean, if you can answer me that in the comments, let me know. Maybe, I don't know, have a quick rewind, watch it, tell me what you think about the AI, but I think she should have been drawn into the elixir collector. Not to worry, she does get the queen, which is the main target. However, clearly she wanted to get the Inferno Tower and the air defense. So queen, I don't know what you were doing. She wanted to get them and she just didn't go in to get them. I don't know. Anyways, hypothetically, if they had gone down, I think Steph probably wanted to come in from this side over the town hall. There'd be a much tighter spread when it comes to the back end of the base in terms of the Lalo coming through. But now that we have 3 multi-infernos and this bigger spread of defenses towards the end, sends in 1 loon and then the slammer onto the multi-inferno. Maybe I should have checked this with my clanmates first, but it's kind of cool for us to speculate in the comments a little bit as well. So let me know as well, do you think the queen should have gone in? And do you think the attack was due to come over the town hall and it was changed? Now you might think, well, coming to the town hall at the end of the attack, but there's literally 1 archer tower after the town hall. So even if all of the loons go down, just save onto a couple of loons, get through that archer tower, you're good. So the first multi-inferno goes down. Now that is key because fighting 3 multi-infernos with a Lalo is incredibly difficult. But when you're doing a Sui Lalo, it then means that you have the rest of your army composition for the LavaLoon. So you want a good spread. You are literally coming in from so many different angles here to then clump all of them in the middle, and that's where the heal or the rage or the big spells get used. So we've got that big clump around the outside, and that's where the haste spells are used to initially power the balloons through, especially if your lava hounds leave your loons behind. And as they come into the center, notice how we also have some coming onto this right hand side. If we didn't do that, the balloons in the center as they came down would then split. Some would come down this way, some would come out to the side. So again, you're then inefficient with that, and it's extra time that you need to think of. So the haste spell is committed to that right hand side to ensure it goes down, and all of the balloons that came through the center had the heal spell with them, and through they come down towards the bottom of the base. Did we want to come to that town hall at the end? Freezes it, no Grand Warden's ability, and whilst a couple of loons go down, we've then got loons coming to the Archer Tower on the back end of the base, and that would have been the final defense. Still got cleanup troops around, so it really didn't matter. I think that was good adaptations for the attack in order to get that one done, and a very convincing Sui LavaLoon method. But there's even better methods. In my opinion, the next one is my favorite method of using the LavaLoon attack to get 3 stars. This next variation is one of my favorites because it's a new way of doing the Electron. What the Electron is when you send in an Electro Dragon and some loons in either your Stone Slammer or Battle Blimp, and you clone them. You're trying to take out the Queen and a section of the base. In this attack, we actually send that in, but we don't clone them. We use some Electro Dragons of our own. So if we look at where the Queen is, she's right in the center of the base. What you do need to take note of when using the Electron, and I'll show you another variation of this, the classic variation of it in the next attack, but you need to look at the sweepers. So 1 points to the right and 1 points down this area. So the best region to come in from is this left hand side, but you could arguably sneak one in here, for example, but getting to the Queen is a lot easier from this side of the base. Now also, we have a multi which you always want to try and take, and the Eagle. Not to mention that we've got a huge chunk of buildings here that are all stood together, meaning that chain from the Electro Dragons can take out that area incredibly well. So we're going to send in the Siege Machine from this side, and if you think about either Battle Blimp or Stone Slammer, we'd have to send the Blimp in this way because it passed to the Town Hall. Stone Slammer goes to the defences. So using the King and Queen to track out the sides here means that the Battle Blimp can come straight in. And you get better value from that as well because it will slowly take out the defences en route, and it's a bit more predictable as to where it's going to go as well. So once the King takes out that left hand side, Queen moves up the top, gets that air defense as well. Always think about which side you're putting your king versus which side you're putting your Queen, and obviously put the Queen on the side where you can reach buildings on the inside. So here comes the Stone Slammer. It's got the E-Dragon side, and we've also got 2 E-Drags of our own, which are already getting to work in chaining through the buildings here. Once we get to this region, we don't use the clone spell, but we do use the rage spell. So the rage means that you can take down a max level Queen in one shot with the Electro Dragon. And what you will see in the next attack is that you might have to freeze that Archer Queen in order to get the hit. But you have to get that one hit in order to take her down. However, look at what is happening already with the base. It's vanishing. It's pretty much gone here. If we pause, the left hand side of the base is vanished. and that is from a couple of Electro Dragons, King and Queen, meaning we now have the rest of the Lalo to come in from this side. Now, as we mentioned in the last attack there, it's still not a case of just throwing the troops in. You do have to be surgical with them loons coming right the way around to try and clump in the middle. So you still follow the same principles even if you have a tighter group of defenses. It's just easier to do than if you're coming from a big wide open spread. But just think about the value that the E-Drags just got. Very, very good value. And moving down to it, the Town Hall again is a tough building for the Lalo. So we've got the haste spells, the main spell you want to use for a Lalo. Freezing that Town Hall was a good idea, but ultimately the Grand Warden's ability over that Gigabomb is what is required from you guys. You can't miss that, otherwise you're probably going to fail your Lalo, because whilst the balloons can survive if they're at full health and in the Grand Warden's aura, it's very unlikely that that's going to happen, and it's very unlikely that you then have a heal spell to put right in that area to boost them back up. So just Grand Warden ability over the Town Hall. By the way, guys, all of the attacks in this video are by crunch time in our CWL Elite matchup versus Croatian Army. GG to Croatian Army, finishing off the season massively in style, but crunch time progressed to the playoffs as well. So if you're interested in joining us, join my Discord server, link down below. You'll find everything you need to know, maxed out Town Hall 12s. The final attack of this video, and then what I am going to do is link you across to a video that I did very recently on the P.E.K.K.A. Bobat. Very similar to this style of video, however we broke down the P.E.K.K.A. Bobat. For this last attack though, we have the Electron, arguably my favourite variation of the Lalo, because it has a few different phases. The more that we have in an attack, the more I enjoy it. So for the Electron, again, you can use the Stone Slammer, similar to what you've seen in that last one, and it's basically the same thing. It's just that you don't send in the E-Drags with the Stone Slammer, but you will clone whatever is inside there, or you can use the Battle Blimp, which is used in this one. So first things first, where are the sweepers? That's what I mentioned in that last attack. I mean, you should be paying attention to this anyway if you're doing a Lalo, but especially if you're doing an Electron. So you've got one pointing to the north, one pointing in this area, meaning we've got basically the left or the right of the base where we could use the Electron method. What can we get from the left? First of all, we need to get the Queen. We'd have to come in. We could get the Queen, potentially, but I mean, it's a long route through, and it would have to be the Stone Slammer. But we could arguably take these down, Stone Slammer this, we'd move in further. It could have been an option. However, coming into the top area here, what is done in this attack is taking out this so the Queen can get in, get this Multi-Inferno by herself, and then the Battle Blimp will come down this area, and we will clone right on top of the Eagle Artillery. So that's probably a better option, because if you can get the Eagle, perfect. That is a key defense in terms of the Lalo, but also if you can get to the center of the base. Remember what I said about pathing of the Lalo, trying to make it easier on yourself? Basically, that big wide spread we talked about was to get your troops to the center, but if you've already taken out the center, then you've got that circle around the outside of the base where it's just easy for the Lalo to go around. So if you can get to the center with your initial phase, in that of the Electron, then you're laughing. So the top air defense goes down, the Multi-Inferno goes down. Whilst we don't get the Queen with that, that's fine, that's what the E-Drag's for, but she is going to pick off a few other of these buildings, and it just means that the Battle Blimp has a safer method through. Notice the couple of loons here first. Might have been a touch quick on the Battle Blimp because it is faster, but you do want a couple of loons in first just to test for any black air bombs, because if your Battle Blimp goes down early, then it's not necessarily good. But check that out, guys. The clone comes down with the Rage spell and with the Freeze spell on the Queen. The loons spread out and the E-Drag is there to take out the Queen. Now it does get caught up on the Air Skellies and the Baby Dragon, but a second freeze is definitely needed. Otherwise, the Queen wouldn't have gone down. Now let's have a check of this out. All of this is gone just because of that initial push, which is great. Now when the Lalo comes in from this side, we can swoop around, and you can see how it's just so much easier to control the pathing when you're not having to try and get some balloons to come through this way, some to get to the center for them to group up back up again. You've just got a bit of a tighter group of defenses, so it's a bit easier. But again, as we mentioned in the last attack, don't just throw all of your loons in, make sure that you're coming in from them different angles. You want the haste spell initially. They are going to be the defenses that are the spells, that push the balloons in order to get them onto the defenses, get them down quick, especially whilst the hounds have potentially left your balloons. That's then what's going to get your loons together, and then you can use a heal or a rage on the inside of the base as your balloons all come together. If you're coming across 2 to 3 splash damage defenses or multi-infernos with the loons, you might want to think about the heal, because you can't heal the loons up any other way, and they take a huge amount of splash damage. With that being said, when you come down to splash at the end, you've got to have a plan for that. Most of the time people will use a haste to get onto the splash, maybe freeze it, or another popular method is bringing in a loon to the wizard tower in order to distract it whilst the rest of the loons sneak around the back. So this one does get incredibly tight, but I did want to show you the Electron method because it was used in this attack, and that's a good chunk of different LavaLoon style attacks for you. If you do want to see the P.E.K.K.A. Bobat broken down in a similar fashion to this, it is probably the best 2-star into 3-star strategy, I think, the P.E.K.K.A. Bobat, and it helps with clan war leagues or single attack format tournaments. You'll be able to check that video out right there. I'd highly recommend it. I did that just a couple of days ago, so go check it out, guys. But that wraps it up for this one. Until next time, peace out.